remaining in regulation. The inbound. Hit with Lawson to Kukoc. And the Chicago Bulls have won their fifth championship in the last 7 years. Just 0.6 of a second remaining. It's a 4-point lead.
Here we are. We've got Rami Boraie on this via a really great friend of mine coming to us from Dubai. And he's been busy lately, even though a lot of us have been living with the new normal. Rami has been keeping busy. Rami, mind telling us what's been on your schedule lately?
I've been running a bunch of quiz nights and been doing some weird comedy shows over Zoom, which is always a fun thing for people to check out. We were doing our Dubai version of Would I Lie to You, which went pretty well. And other than that, I've been just really watching some solid reality TV.
So as you guys know, what we're doing today is we are going to be talking about the show that every guy in the world right now has been watching, which is The Last Dance.
Hey, and girl.
And girl.
My girlfriend's a big fan.
Of course, and girl too. Yeah. But The Last Dance, it's interesting. Everybody already knows how great of a team the Chicago Bulls were during Jordan's last run. And yet it's a story that people still want to relive over and over again.
You know, I will say this. This is the coolest thing. So I do a lot of work with the local theater here, Courtyard Playhouse, and one of the actors in it, he's this young guy. His name's James, and he's a diehard basketball fan. Like, he's a huge basketball nut. But he was obviously born after 2001 or 2002, so he's always heard stories of Jordan and the Bulls, but he's never really seen it. So for him, watching The Last Dance, it's the first time he's experiencing this. So on the side, I'm messaging him and he's like, yo, this is crazy. Rodman really went on a vacation? And I'm like, yeah. Oh my God. You should have seen Rodman in the 90s. He was insane. So it's funny for me and you, this feels like we're just reliving memories.
How old is he? James? How old is James?
17 or 18, I think. 17 probably.
He's probably from the LeBron generation. So
yeah, he's a diehard LeBron kid. So for him, he's always heard the LeBron Jordan stats, and he's always seeing LeBron James. So he's LeBron's got to be better than Jordan or whatnot. But now that he's watching this documentary, it's mind blowing, and to also everybody always knew Jordan was great, but to see people now realize how ridiculous Scottie Pippen is, or for me when I was a kid and I used to play. Now I'm short, but when I was younger, I was about average height, so I was the big rebound guy because Dennis Rodman was my hero, which was the worst choice of heroes ever. But
he got it as well, didn't he?
Yeah, but this was I was actually a Rodman fan when he was with the Pistons more than when he went to the Bulls and started coloring his hair, because it was one of the cards I had, and he had a good rebound stat, and I knew that's what I did, so I was like, yeah, this is my guy.
So you've obviously got MJ, and MJ was still pretty much unbeatable in many regards. You've got Scottie Pippen. He was one of the leading scorers of the game, and he was back with a vengeance because he kind of, found peace with whatever unfair arrangement they had with his contract. Then you had Rodman, as you said, who was, who was on the surface a real aggressive kind of pit bull defender, like you said, but also, behind closed doors, very analytical and devoted to his craft. And then you had the role players too, right? So you had Steve Kerr, you had the Croatian duel that Jerry Cross found that the guys weren't very happy with.
Tony Kukoc.
Are we pronouncing it right? Kukoc. Yeah.
Can we 1 second? Because growing up, to me, Tony Kukoc was a big deal on that team. But in this documentary, they have gone so far out of their way to make him seem like such an insignificant piece. It's kind of funny. You kind of watch it and you're like I think anyone watching this that doesn't know, they'd be like, oh, that Tony Kukoc guy, was he any good? And it's yeah, actually, he was really he was pretty key to that team.
So now what we're going to talk about. Could any of today's modern teams, the kind of teams that your friend James probably grew up watching, could any of them have taken on the Bulls and succeeded on this particular Chicago Bulls roster and succeeded, right?
Okay, but before we do this, we got to establish one rule.
Okay.
A couple of things. Number one, the reffing situation.
Okay. So we're talking about whether the hand check rule is in place or not. Okay.
That we need. And two, how many tune-up games do they get?
So so that's a good question, right? What about if we imagine in this magical scenario that what's happened is that the 97 Bulls turn up at the playoff championship. But instead of whoever they were supposed to face that year, who they end up facing is this completely unexpected NBA team from the future, who was
this already sounds better than Space Jams 2.
Kind of, yeah, who was transported exactly. So they are magically transported to that stadium, and we are playing basically 97 era refereeing. Okay,
cool. All right.
But it's a playoff situation, so they've basically got 7 games to between the two teams to see who's the better one.
Okay.
Yeah. So
let's go through them.
I mean, looking at that game, if you remember how they played, you had just Shaq under the rim and just completely just easy setups and just knocking them down right, left, and center. So from that perspective, out of all the teams, I think that's the one that's giving me the biggest trouble.
Oh, really?
Because my gut check thought process on almost every team is Bulls win. Mm-hmm. Because
if you look at Bulls, every time they face even a remote bit of adversity, they manage to overcome it. Like the only team that I saw that gave the Bulls significant trouble was the Indiana Pacers and Reggie Miller. And that's because Reggie Miller, they were playing a hard 3-ball.
Yeah, I mean, Reggie Miller's Pacers is basically an early version of the Warriors, if you want.
Exactly.
So when I look at the Lakers and I look at the way they're set up, you wonder, under the rim, Shaq was a dominant force. Shaq and Michael played at the same time, so there is a history there of like them competing against each other. So you then look at it, and I got to think, honestly speaking, the Bulls would win just because I think defensively they would have them a bit more. And more importantly, they would be able to work around them. And you still have a youngish Kobe. So he's still shooting a lot. He's still probably going to get stripped, turnovers, and stolen from quite a bit. And I think when you're working with a team like Scotty, Michael, and Rodman at the time, you're dealing with a team that's very sharp and focused and not really throwing the ball around as much as they probably did. The real outlier there is Rick Fox. Rick Fox is a huge aspect to that team, and you got to wonder what he's bringing to the table, because he brings them a bit of the third element there.
Well, yeah, and also not to mention, who would they have coaching them? And it's no other than Phil Jackson himself, several years older.
Well, this brings another question: Are we going to eliminate the coach factor?
I think we should add that in. I think we should add in the coach factor, just so we can make this a little bit more crazy, right?
All right.
You got to wonder what his formation would be. Like, you have to wonder how he's going to utilize. Like, Hack as Shaq would probably be going down. That's for sure. But you also got to wonder how he's going to utilize his players and his bench a lot more from the Chicago side. And then from the LA side, how he's going to set up the team to be more less vulnerable offensively to being stripped and having the ball stolen. So I think that's where I think he would be the factor. I think it would benefit the Lakers to have older, wiser
Phil Jackson than it would the Bulls in this scenario. Because Shaq is a beast. And when you have Shaq, you kind of have a bit of a cheat code.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And Phil Jackson was able to utilize Shaq the right way and get Shaq to do what he needed to win. And then you had a relentless Kobe. So you can only imagine how many like The Art of War books how many times he reads The Art of War to Kobe Bryant before he goes to bed at night during that series, just to get that bit of intensity in him, right? So when you're looking at it through that lens, that would help the Lakers, but ultimately I still got to side with Chicago winning.
Because think about it, Orlando was as close to like Shaq and Penny, was probably as close as you're going to get to Shaq and Kobe. Like obviously Kobe's a lot better than Penny, but when Penny was starting out, he was pretty close to that thing. They didn't really do much. What I'm trying to say is that Orlando team was incredibly strong.
Yeah.
And they weren't really that impactful during, like, they went to the finals against Houston, but that's about it during that run. So when I look at that, I got to wonder to myself, Jordan could have probably handled them.
All right. I won't give my answer too quickly on this, but this is probably, in my opinion, the most compelling of all of these. Like, this is the one that I think would be the best series to watch. Kevin Garnett, relentless, right? Like, during that playoff run, he was on another level. He was so good they made an Adam Sandler movie that was good about how good Kevin Garnett was. That's how great his run was.
That's also on Netflix, isn't it? What's that show?
Uncut Gems.
Uncut Gems. Right. Okay.
Like, on a side note, imagine you had an amazing run and somebody wrote a movie that you had this rock that was giving you powers. and then like, come on, no, that was all me too.
But then you have Paul Pierce, who was he was incredible across the board. Like he was one of, like, there was a while where I fell off from basketball, and the thing that got me back into basketball was Paul Pierce. Like, I just loved everything about how he played. And in the playoff Pierce, he knows how to be the dagger. He knows how to kill teams. I think the one thing, again, if we're bringing coaches into this, you're going to have Phil Jackson, who's going to probably plan a bit better around them. But I look at this as, this team is a bit similar to, if you were to compare, I guess, to like the New York Knicks, in that they're more physical.
Patrick Ewing, New York Knicks.
Yeah, Patrick Ewing.
Like, besides not having the Ewing factor, I guess the only other I wouldn't say they're like the bad boy Pistons, but they were, like, this was a physical team. They absolutely dominated across the court. They played rough. They had that ability. And these are the kind of teams that historically gave the Bulls some trouble.
Yeah. How would the big three of the Bulls fare against the big three of this Celtics team?
In my opinion, I honestly think this Celtic team probably, the only thing that gets them through is if Michael Jordan does Michael Jordan things. That's from my impression. Like, look, out of the teams we're talking about today, probably the Celtics team, not everyone's favorite. Probably the one people would say easily Jordan. But you have to look at how these guys play in the playoffs year after year. Pierce in the playoff is incredible. Garnett, he's an animal in how he plays. And you have Rajon Rondo, who's coming up. So when I look at it, I got to think that this would be the team that the Bulls would have the most amount of trouble with. Especially that they have Ray Allen adding threes, which is a huge factor, because that was always something that kind of bothered the Bulls as well. Like, if you look historically, when Chicago had to play against the Pacers, that went to a Game 7. That was because you had Reggie Miller. You add Ray Allen, you add Kevin Garnett beneath the post as a neutralizing force for Dennis Rodman, and you add Paul Pierce. You've neutralized everyone across the board. The only factor that's there is Mike is Mike. And if MJ does MJ things, then yeah, Chicago wins. So you have Phil Jackson coaching Chicago. You have Doc Rivers coaching the Celtics. Me and you are playing a game of pickup ball. You get to pick a coach for your team. Who are you picking, Doc Rivers or Phil Jackson?
Or it's Phil Jackson.
Okay, there we go. We're done.
Doc Rivers couldn't do anything with the LA Clippers. Like, Doc Rivers was gifted a really talented lineup. With the Clippers, he couldn't really even do much. So, looking at this one, because if you look up, I believe this Lakers team was like one of the best defensive teams, and simultaneously, I think they were like sixth best defensive team and third best offensive team. So this was a dynamite roster. Paul Gasol was just absolutely, or Pau Gasol, sorry, was absolutely incredible during these years, and he was a defensive force. You had Kobe, who is now wiser, smarter, playing more tactically. It's very hard to bet against this Laker team, especially against a Bulls team that, again, during this playoff run, they did have some troubles when they were facing, like I said in the past, the Pacers and whatnot. And this is a team that, again, had trouble getting past New York in past years. This is a team. The difference about the Bulls team, though, is whenever they were to dominate, they dominated. Similar with like Orlando versus the Lakers here, it was like a 4-1 final. And like from the minute it started, you knew it was game over for Orlando. Like the Lakers were not letting this up.
But would you, yeah. On that point, though, would you say that the LA Lakers, at this version of the LA Lakers, with a more experienced Kobe and Phil Jackson as well, of course, this would be more of a what do you call it? A game of intellect. So it's less about brute power. So there's more strategy being involved here.
Yeah. I think that I couldn't put it better myself. I think that's exactly what it would be. It would be a game. It's at this point it's chess. And the funny thing is, it's Phil Jackson against himself. So it's kind of like in X-Men, when like Professor X and Magneto, like when they play their younger selves. Like it's just it's one of those situations where you really got to wonder just where it's going to go in that sense. Like, what's going to be the factors? I think the teams stack up beautifully. I mean, Chicago was an incredibly defensive team, and they were an incredibly offensive team. The Lakers, same exact thing. So you're looking at two teams that were top of class on both offense and defense. The only difference here is going to be coaching structure. And honestly speaking, it pains me to say, this might be the one team I think that could beat the 97 Bulls.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So this one, then, when we finally have to decide,
I'm not sold yet.
You're not
This
sold
might be
yet.
the one.
Because when I was looking up just the defensive overall rating, when I was looking up the offensive numbers, I was just like, this team was really, they were a machine. They knew what they needed to do to win games. And they were relentless. The only thing that gives me pause was the trouble that they had, I believe, against Denver and against Houston. I think both of those went to either Game 6 or Game 7, and that was a bit rougher of a ride. And I feel historically the Bulls had a bit, seldomly did you see a Game 7 on their rosters. So knowing that Houston and Denver, and it was Carmelo's Denver, could push the Lakers that far, it makes me go, okay, wait, maybe, Chicago probably wins.
Yeah, but they were also quite tired in that postseason run, weren't they? This particular lineup.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's decide then. Is this going to be a Bulls championship or a Lakers championship?
Michael does Michael stuff. I'm gonna go Bulls. I was like, I talked myself out of it. Like I was like, okay, Rami, this is the one you're gonna go Lakers. You're gonna go Lakers. Yeah. And then I started looking, like I was thinking about their playoff history. I'm looking at how they did. And I was like, yeah, actually, no, I'm gonna go Bulls. Yeah, Michael's Michael. This one's actually gonna be the fastest one in my books. Let me ask you a quick question. All right. Did the Bulls ever get that close to being eliminated as they did against San Antonio?
Ooh. Of course. We know the answer to that. But hold on. It's different, though, when you talk about San Antonio. Because when you talk about San Antonio, you don't necessarily talk about the athleticism of its players. Most of the time, when you talk San Antonio, you talk about the genius strategy and the tactics being employed.
Yeah, Pop's a G. But at the end of the day, I don't think Jordan lets himself get that close to elimination. That like 97, 90, 98, Jordan, he's not letting himself get that close. Where they have to have one of the greatest comebacks of all time happen for them to win the game, go into overtime, and then win it.
And also keep in mind that the game was won not by, it was a shot that was stealed by 1.3. It was Ray Allen.
Absolutely incredible team. Absolutely amazing team. Jordan wins. To me, there's not much to discuss in this one, just because I think, look, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that this team wasn't amazing and this team wasn't great. But this team was destructed on numerous occasions. This team had adversity on numerous occasions. The Bulls, the thing about, like, especially, and I'm not talking, because a lot of people say, oh, the Bulls had problems with the Pistons early on, or the Bulls had problem, with New York where they thought they were on the brink. Absolutely, got it. But those are so far and few in between, and the Pistons was so far in the early years. Miami, they had trouble out the gate. Year one, they were supposed to take it, they didn't take it. Year two, they took it, and they almost didn't take it.
This was LeBron.
It's not the same LeBron who defied the odds by with that fantastic comeback.
Yeah. See that team, they could maybe take them because Kyrie's a factor in that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But this team, as much as I love Dwayne Wade, and like, don't get me wrong, Dwayne Wade is one of my favorite players, and I absolutely I love that Miami Heat team. I mean, Bosch, despite everything he did to Toronto, I got nothing but love for him. He's a great defensive player. But in my opinion, they were a team that was exposed so many times that if I'm playing this thought exercise, like if I'm humoring this thought exercise, I got to assume that Chicago would win. So everybody always talks LeBron versus Jordan, or they talk about, Kobe versus Jordan. For me, I think of Kawhi as the best embodiment of playoff Jordan. Like Kawhi, he load manages. He takes naps during the season. But when it comes to playoff time, he goes that extra level. He does he's king of those moments that Jordan was so known for. So for me, when I look at these teams, when you have Tim Duncan, one of the greatest players of all time, easily top 5, right? Mm-hmm. When you have Tony Parker, who was an excellent additional player, like always knew how to play that support roles, like a Scottie Pippen. When you have LaMarcus Aldridge at his best, at this time, this was like, I think, in my opinion, this is when he was playing some of his best ball. And then you have Manu Ginobili. Manu Ginobili reminded me of like Gumby, where he could be flailing. Like you can foul him, you can clothesline him, you can have the Undertaker come up and tombstone him, and if you gave him a ball and he threw it in the air, it somehow manages to go in and he gets an and one. Like Ginobili was the most frustrating. See, the thing is, I hated the Spurs all my life, and nothing pissed me off more than Manu Ginobili, because he could be tripping, falling on a banana peel, throw the ball, and it goes in, and he's like, oh, and one. Like, that's how he was. So, for me, when I look at these two teams, this is the one time where I don't think I'll have to back down. I will go Spurs win.
So later on, we're going to talk about Golden State, and that's going to be an interesting discussion. But talking about the Spurs, and you were talking about Manu Ginobili here and how he would flail around, and somehow, if he tosses the ball in the air, it would still go in. We're talking about the team here who really popularized new ways of playing basketball, right? So you've got the Euro step from Manu. You've also got the famous Tony Parker floater, right?
Yeah.
So those are the kinds of basketball techniques that you would wonder how 1997 Bulls would deal with.
That's the thing. So, like we always said, a lot of these sometimes come down to the coach. Because let's be honest. Let's be fair. Before anyone ever criticizes anything that we've said throughout the segment, or says, "Oh, I don't know if that's true," or "I disagree," these are all championship caliber teams. Mm-hmm. So these are not teams that we're saying in any way, shape, or form are not amazing at what they do. We're asking, how do these stack up against one of the greatest NBA legacy champion teams of the Chicago Bulls, especially the 97-98 period? Like that, those 3 years from like 95 or whatnot, that was peak Bulls, right?
What I'm fantasizing would happen is that at first you would have Jordan and Pippen and Rodman watch this team play against them, and they would basically witness the Euro step. They would see the floater. Yeah. And then they would see the ball distribution that is amazing, right? So it's almost like tiki-taka Barcelona passing of the ball, right? What I'm fantasizing is that after 2 games, we're going to see Michael doing Euro step.
Oh, okay. So you think he'll pick up the...
Yeah, they would learn. They would learn quickly, and they would do it even better than the Spurs could. And that would be really cool. To be able to see Jordan do all of those different things. Like imagine.
But who is your counterpoint? Who's your counterpoint to Tim Duncan?
Well, you've only got Rodman, right? And
Yeah.
it's hard. And you know how very patient Tim Duncan is. No matter how much Rodman would harass him, you know that this guy would not lose his cool, right?
And that's like, I feel like that would get under, and Rodman can get fed up. And I think someone like Kawhi would totally get under Rodman's skin, would totally get under Pippen's skin.
Danny Green was there too, so you've got a good marksman on the team.
I feel, and I think with having the addition of Pop, I think this is the one time I could say, if not, I think it would be an intense series. I know I said earlier that I think Boston would be the most fun. I'm actually going to change my answer. I think Spurs would be the most fun to watch. And I think it could go Game 6, Game 7. I might give the nod to the Spurs on this one. But
that's pretty controversial. Okay, so we found the one team that could possibly defeat the Chicago Bulls 97.
I've been looking to do it this whole time, and I like every time I get close, I'm like, no.
Just waiting to get it. Yeah.
I think Pop. I think you're right though. I think definitely you would have Jordan at least adopt the Euro step. I think you'll have Pippen and Jordan be able to figure out how to work around this defense. I don't doubt that at all. The only part that gets me is you saw how last year with Embiid and whatnot, you had Kawhi almost like with the Raptors pretty much figure out how to shut them down. Like he knows how to get the best players to play subpar. And I think that's one of his talents. You saw it against Steph in the finals. I think you got to give the nod to the Spurs.
I would agree with you. The only teams that were really able to give Chicago a real problem in the 90s were the kinds of teams who were like brick walls, right? Because I think of Chicago Bulls the way I think of Manny Pacquiao, very relentless attacking, relentless attacking. But then when you put him against somebody like Mayweather, who's more patient and he's not there for any showy kind of spectacular performance, but he would be patient and he would choose a more sensible way of winning. Yeah. And that always works. And that worked. That worked in that boxing matchup. And I think that's going to work in this basketball matchup too.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's also that's also how the Spurs gave LeBron's Heat such a hard time. No matter how flashy and athletic you are, being analytical and patient wins. Mm-hmm. And that's again, I think that that style of playing applies to practically any sport. So if you think about how Argentina always loses to Germany in the World Cup in recent years, you've got flashy Argentina, very passionate, very athletic. You've got very capable players in that team who are all individually fantastic. But when you match them against a very organized and very systematic team like Germany, it's just the outcome is always the same. It's always the organized team that wins. So here's the Spurs. The Spurs quite possibly is the team that's going to defeat the 97 Bulls.
I think they have a chance. Yeah, I would. Yeah. That would be a series. Like I said, I think it'll go to like a Game 7.
I don't think it's going to be as entertaining to watch, though. That's the part I disagree with.
It depends. It depends how you like to watch. I love a good defensive battle in basketball.
But I like flashy basketball.
Okay, yeah. No, this is not your series. Then go back to the Celtics.
yeah. Or actually, I would go back to the Lakers. I would go back to the Lakers. I'd go back to the
Kobe Lakers.
Or quite possibly the next team that we're going to be talking about, which is...
This would be one of the more interesting matchups because what you had here is this is when LeBron James knew he was a leader in a lot of ways. Like this is when, and he was playing for his home city. You know what I mean? So you're looking at LeBron James literally at his peak of he wants to win. He wants to bring it home. He wants anything possible. You want to love, like you want this to be the team that can take down the Bulls in a lot of ways because you look at it and to me, I think Kyrie Irving is phenomenal in so many ways. One of my favorite players. I think his handling is almost second to none, and I think he was the perfect Robin to LeBron James's Batman. And I think he's kind of the thing LeBron James is missing.
He hated that fact.
Of course, nobody I think I was the only kid who wanted to be Robin, just because my name started with an R, so I loved Robin. I was like, yo, I relate to this.
You're right, but Pippen was comfortable being number 2 to Michael.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, in that time frame, there wasn't the Michael Jordan. There was Magic Johnson. There was like a lot of great players, Wilt, Jerry West, but there wasn't like the is he better than Michael Jordan conversation. After Michael Jordan, every player that comes up, it's the next Michael Jordan. Similar, like if you go to hockey, yes, there was Gordie Howe, but really, who's the next Wayne Gretzky? Like it was that definitive player. So the thing is, in modern day basketball, everyone wants to be the next Jordan. Right? No, so seldomly are you going to find a player, especially a young player as talented as Kyrie, be totally satisfied saying, yes, I'm going to be the next Scottie Pippen. He's going to want to be the next Jordan. So it's understandable that he hated the idea of being Robin to Batman. But at that time, Scottie Pippen, he just knew he was teammates with the best player at the time, and he knew that he was looking good. He knew what his stats were. He was confident in who he was. And when you have the best player on earth saying, my best teammate I've ever had is that guy, that's a pretty damn good compliment. You're not exactly like, no, I want to be the best player. You're kind of like...
That's enough of a validation to keep you going.
Yeah, and you got to also look at upbringing. Like, Scottie came from very, humble beginnings. So, of course, for him, he's like, whatever. I don't really care. I don't think it really bothered him as much as people want to make it seem, because when you're winning championships, when you're playing amazing, and when everybody knows you're as not as good, but you're like a big part of the success of this team.
Yeah. So what you're saying, I mean, okay, so just to build on what you're saying, though, you're also talking about a Kyrie Irving being an NBA star in an era of social media stardom, sponsorships, and your off-court alter ego. I mean, he's got his whole Pepsi Uncle Drew thing going on.
Yeah.
So he had all of those different avenues of adoration. That's enough for him to probably want it to stay that way, as opposed to suddenly playing in the shadows of a different superstar, right?
100%. So this Cavs team is obviously one of the best teams to really play. However, I find that there is holes in their game. I find Kevin Love was good. He wasn't as amazing as he was when he was with Minnesota, for instance.
Right. Yeah.
And
he wasn't consistent as well.
Yeah. I find LeBron James would absolutely do everything to take the team on his back. But when he has Michael Jordan, who can do the same, if not better, when you have Scottie Pippen being that, and you have Rodman beneath, I don't think anyone's as defensively as strong as Rodman on rebounds on the Cavs. I gotta go with, and then what? Ty Lue is the coach. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Phil Jackson.
I think it would be an incredible series. I think it would be amazing to watch. I feel like that would be kind of like the All-Star games, what they were showing when it was Kobe versus Michael. I think it would be like that kind of game.
And I don't see how
LeBron's a businessman. LeBron, he shows up to the game with a briefcase.
He does. He literally shows up to the playoffs with a briefcase. What the hell's in the briefcase?
At least LeBron is willing to take a stand for certain issues, social issues in America. Reason. Jordan didn't do that. You got to remember. You got to remember the famous Republicans wear shoes too.
Jordan's flawed. I'm never going to say differently. Don't get me wrong. It's not one or the other. But let's remember, this is the same LeBron James that in the playoff, when the AC units were turned off, he had cramps and couldn't finish the game. I'm not trying to belittle. He's an athlete, in like LeBron James's body is a specimen of the abilities of the human body. However, I'm just saying, I don't think you see. Mike played the game with the flu. Yeah, he blacked out. He was lights out. And he had like whether it was diarrhea from food poisoning from the pizza delivery that's been rumored, whatever it was, he still played lights out. AC units weren't working. Homeboy got a LeBron James got a cramp. This one, number one. This is why I told you I hate these thought processes because you have to deal with a current model versus an old. So this is why this entire reason I asked what the reffing rules were.
Yeah.
Was for this game.
Yeah.
Okay. Number one.
I brought up earlier Chicago versus the Pacers, right? Because to me, that the Pacers, Reggie Miller, that just shows you how they would deal with a three-focused team, right?
Yeah.
Earlier, before the Pacers were playing the Bulls, I believe he was making about 30 threes a series. When he played the Bulls and he played the Knicks, he was down to about 17, I believe, total.
Okay.
Right? So in that, you could see already Jordan, Pippen, and the Bulls roster are able to neutralize threes being taken. Now, they're going to play a much more physical game. I don't think you have Steph Curry being as fancy and dipsy doodling around as much as you do. I don't think you have Klay Thompson having the free ride that he's going to have. I think you have him being played a lot harder. I think you have him a much harder time to get his shots off. And I don't see him being as dominated on the three section as he has been all throughout. This is a team that's going to be playing the perimeter. So the one thing is, you're going to be neutralizing Dennis Rodman that way. Dennis Rodman is not going to be as effective. He just needs to get the rebounds.
The big difference here is Kevin Durant.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Durant, in my opinion, could be the best all-around basketball player of all time.
Uh-huh. I've heard that before.
Because
you remember when you asked Michael Jordan who would beat you, Kobe Bryant or LeBron James, and Michael Jordan jokingly said Kevin Durant.
Yeah. And it's honestly,
besides the fact that I think Michael's doing that because he doesn't want to give LeBron or Kobe the satisfaction, I think you look at Kevin Durant and you have a player that can play. He can shoot the three. He can play in deep. He can dunk. He can do whatever you need him to do. He is a taller, more usable Michael Jordan than Michael Jordan is. Now, the question comes down. Do they beat the Bulls?
Okay, but before you answer that, though, because that's pretty much the climax of this analysis. I was watching an interview on YouTube with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, talking about Golden State and this new generation of NBA teams. The topic was how come less and less people are doing hook shots, the classic Kareem hook shot. And his answer is because now everybody just wants to do threes because everyone is inspired by Steph Curry. Steph Curry is today's Michael Jordan in terms of what the kids aspire to be. Right? Mm-hmm. The kids are not aspiring to be able to leap off the penalty line to do a dunk. It's not that anymore. Now it's just shooting threes. The further you are, the better. And that is what Kareem said. And when he said this, he said it with a sense of respect. And that he said, but the thing is, that kind of skill that Steph Curry has, he has never witnessed in his day. So he used to think that, that's what Steph was able to do. You could easily defend him. But you can't because he can just shoot from anywhere. And then that is when Kareem said, but here's the thing, right? So I actually watched this guy in practice, and he made a ridiculous number of them in, like 79 out of 100.
I believe Jordan would alter his game. I think Jordan would know exactly how to defend against the three, and he would also start hitting more threes if he has to.
Oh, but I think that's the part where I don't know if that is possible, because see, the Euro step, right? That is basically a bodily movement that you could learn. You could learn that.
But Jordan could make threes.
He could make threes,
okay,
not to the same level that.
I had a feeling we would have this debate.
I don't want to cut you off, but I looked up. If you looked at the 3-point percentages of the Spurs players, there were the highest was around 0.42, so 42%, and a lot of them were high to mid 38%. If you go to the Bulls, Michael Jordan not that far off. He was about 31.5%.
Yeah, but how many did he take though?
Well, exactly, he didn't take that much.
Exactly, too.
But
Yeah.
that was his percentage that he was going.
If you give him a couple of days to work out in the gym and work on it a bit more, I think he can maintain that percentage. And if you look at Michael Jordan, if you look at the Spurs, think how many giveaways you have done by Klay Thompson and Steph Curry. And then you're against one of the best defensive players of Michael Jordan, who's going to steal the ball from them. You can't shoot threes if you don't have the ball. That's just a fact.
But do you think it's going to be Michael Jordan guarding Steph Curry? It won't be.
I think he will set up the defensive systems because Pippen was more shooting guard, but he would probably, I think, be up against Steph.
Look how many other 3-point.
I don't disagree.
You've got Kevin Durant, and you've also got Klay Thompson.
Yeah. No, you're right.
So instead of one Reggie Miller, now you're dealing with three, and plus Draymond Green also shot good threes. Yeah.
Well, and also look, Draymond Green and Rodman will be fighting under the rim the entire series.
Oh yeah. That would be a fun thing to watch too. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have Andre Iguodala. I just think with the harder rule game that we have today, back in the day, I think they have a rougher time.
And these are basically young generation players who are not used to that, and they probably have not witnessed that, experienced it on a playoff level too. The intensity of that physical strain.
I think this one is a game of the masters and the students, and then the students become the masters.
Yeah.
You have Steve Kerr learns all Phil Jackson's moves and secrets. He goes to this team. He can now build upon it. Then you have Curry. You have Klay Thompson. These are people who watch their fathers play the game and realize the importance of the three-point line. And they're able to pick it up, and they're able to utilize the knowledge that they learned from doing that to the importance of the three-pointer. Because at the end of the day, it's about having the highest score, not the flashiest dunk.
You have these faster, more agile players in Klay and Steph who can do things in ball handling that really wasn't done in the game before. You have Kevin Durant, who's a stabilizing force and a force of nature. So with that all in mind, you have to look at it and you have to ask yourself, is this a team that beats Chicago? I think it does. But do they beat Chicago because they're a significantly better team or because the way the game is played has advanced? And these are students of the game.
If we do say, it probably didn't apply so much to the Spurs because the Spurs are kind of like an anomaly in discipline, right? But if we are to say that this Golden State team can beat the Bulls, 97 Bulls, we could in effect be saying that this is the best team of all time.
Very possible, and it makes sense. Game evolves. Mm-hmm. Now, the way the game's played is different. I'll give you that 100%. So, yeah, maybe they might have maybe this team is actually, funny enough, beaten by the bad boy Pistons because they can't deal with the physicality.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There is that possibility. But when I put these two teams together, the way they line up, the way they stack up on paper, I give it the slight edge to Golden State. And this is why I talk this is generation versus generation. Because out of all the teams we talked about, except the Cavaliers, every other team had a player that at least played with Jordan, was at least part of that generation.
I would say the Bulls would win this one. And it's for a slightly different reason than capability. it's defense, right? The defensive factor here is going to be, determining a lot of things. I think the reason why Stephen Clay became Stephen Clay in today's NBA era is because nobody could defend them the way that Jordan and Pippen and Rodman would defend Golden State.
You might be right. Honestly, you might be right.
Nobody is that patient and athletic. Now, keep in mind, we always see clips of Iverson outsmarting Michael with a crossover, right? And that's pretty much what you could probably be looking at if Michael were to try to take on Steph.
Can they neutralize Steph and Clay and Kevin Durant?
I think it's going to come down to endurance. So
I'm happy you said that.
It's in some ways it's still a 50-50 because if Golden State can win this, if they win it early, if it stretches to a 7-game series, I think it's going to go to the Bulls.
Whoa, I completely disagree.
You think it's the other way around?
Yeah, because I think endurance and I think athleticism and I think overall strength and conditioning is so much better right now that you have a much more stronger, tougher team in body-wise and athleticism that they won't wear out as easily as the Bulls.
Talking refereeing rules, 97 era, huh? Keep that in mind. So we're still physical.
They will be I keep forgetting the beat-ups.
Yeah. It's going to be quite physical. I don't think Klay Thompson can take that kind of beating. Even Andre Iguodala would have a tough time playing against Rodman and Pippen.
Yeah. No. I think Draymond and Rodman. I think Rodman would really put it to Andre and Draymond. Like definitely. Like they'll be black and blue. Damn. This is tough. You're right. I completely. Even though I brought it up at the top of the segment, I blanked on the refereeing.
So it's a tough one, this one. But I do think this is going to go to the Bulls.
Yeah, you honestly might be right. I think you're right on this one. I'll take the L.
So The Last Dance still being broadcast on Netflix. You can watch it weekly, 2 episodes uploaded every week. We're nearing the end of this season. I think it's only a 1-season run.
Yeah.
But apparently there's like Kobe Bryant has documents of his last season that they're thinking about doing. Magic Johnson's thinking about doing a doc. Everybody's getting a doc now.
I was especially teary-eyed as well when I saw the Kobe Bryant tribute episode.
That was beautiful.
That was beautiful. That was great. So there you have it. Rami, thank you so much for joining us.
No problem. Thanks.
Yeah, and as a Toronto fan, I can only wish you it's like Halley's Comet, isn't it? You're gonna have to wait a few decades before that's a.
We're still champions right now.
Like the good thing is we're still champions.
The longer COVID runs, the longer you'd still be able to call yourself.
Just keep canceling because we stay champs.
Thank you for watching the first episode of The Challengers, where we take what is considered to be the world's best and see if there are alternatives that can equal or even dethrone what is arguably the top of its class. Next episode, we will be talking with Alvin Teo, Executive Creative Director of Naga DDB in Malaysia, to see if Spirited Away truly is the best offering from Studio Ghibli, while taking a peek at Alvin's own wonderful dream-inspired projects. If you have suggestions for topics you would like us to cover in future episodes, please leave a comment below. I'm your host, Michael Filion, bidding you good health and hoping that even in these strange times, you never stop being a challenger.